but I wanted to start by asking for your forgiveness because I feel like I have maybe done a disservice to us as a church in a bit. There's something I just don't like to do, and I don't feel like I'm good at it, and so I often put it off as well, and it's talking about giving. It's not something I'm really good at. I don't consider myself a fundraiser. That would not be on a list anywhere, my skill set, on any sort of resume or anything like that. And so I think I've done a disservice maybe by not keeping you as up to date maybe as I should, and not teaching as much. And no one likes to hear about giving. That's the stereotype of the church. That's all they want is my money, right? That's what we hear. And so I kind of just like for it just to be there. Don't we all just like for the money just to be there? You just go to your bank account, and the money's there, and you get your groceries, and there you go. But we got to work, right? We got to do the different things that it takes for that to happen. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time today updating you on a few things. Just about kind of what happens too, like when you give regularly here at the church. We talk about, we pass the buckets by and you put the Connect cards in, and maybe you give some cash, or maybe you go online and you do some online giving, or you have it set up regularly. There's so many different ways to do that. But when you give regularly, that money kind of goes to salaries for myself, for Karina, and it goes for utilities so that we can have lights and internet and water and all that sort of fun stuff. It goes to maintenance, to take care of a building, to cut down trees that might be falling on our building, or to redo an HVAC system in an office, things like that. And it goes towards fun things like mortgages. That's exciting stuff. The things that you have to pay if you want to keep the property, right? And then it also goes to ministries. But in a lot of times it kind of goes in that order. We have to do all these things to keep going, to keep things working, and then it goes to ministries. And so over the last 2 years, we've been setting some goals, and I think it's kind of like hitting a moving target, trying to figure out where it's going to be, what it should be as we're a church in transition, as we've been growing, as we've changing of different givers here and there. And so we try to set a goal as a finance team, as a board, of what we need to achieve and what we can do with that giving. But we've been missing the goal a little bit here and there, and we've had to dig into our savings, which I'm so happy and glad for a church that was thinking ahead, that had some savings as a little bit of a buffer in many different ways. And so we've had to dig into that for a bit. And just to be completely honest, if we continue to pull from our savings the way that we are, we'll be depleting that within a year or so. So it's something for us to really look at and to think about, what are we going to be doing? And so, we're always praying, and I feel like it's important to inform you of what's going on. And we're at the moment now, our finance team and our board are adjusting a budget so that we can have it ready for the new year to come. And we're looking at even some possibilities of some creative funding through ways of maybe sales of parts of our property, or maybe renting it out in creative ways that will help provide for some of these deficits. And so we encourage you to pray with us as we do that. And there's a place for you as well in this. Maybe there's a word we talk about sometimes in church that's not really talked about anywhere else, called tithe. And that really has this connotation of a 10% of what we take in. That's what we are giving. And those of us that were kind of raised in the church, that's something we always just were used to. I remember a class that I sat in when I was, in 6th grade, and they said, if you make $1, how much do you give? A dime, And so it's kind of, all that was just ingrained. And so if you're in the church, you've heard that and you get that. And it's definitely a time to have faith, to live like, okay, I could do more with this, but I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to give it to the church so that we can continue to minister in different ways. And so many of you, maybe you tithe, and in these moments, maybe some of you that aren't tithing are wanting to move towards tithing. That's something to think about. Like, maybe I could give and move towards giving to 10% of what I bring in. And maybe others, that are tithing, you're like, I feel like I could give even more. It's amazing to hear the stories of generosity around the world and people that will give beyond. So maybe God's talking to you about one of those two ways. Maybe you're not giving and you're here, and we love that you're here, and you're thinking, well, I could give a little. I think I could make this work or make this work. I'd encourage you to think about that and pray about that, about how you could give, and I'd encourage you to start. Because anytime you give, it's this lesson in trust. Last week we talked about the Israelites and how God provided bread for them, this manna from heaven, and that's really what we're doing when we're giving. We're saying, okay, I'm going to trust that God's going to provide as we do something bigger together with our resources, as we pool them together. And so, that's something I want you to think about. And I wanted to be honest with you and talk with you about that. And we'll try to do better about keeping you up to date. And so I wanted to encourage you in those areas.